I'll order, can I put an order in? Yeah. So, medium burger.
Excuse me, can I have
Medium
your
burger.
attention, please?
Let me write this down, please.
Mark, you be quiet and behave yourself.
I'm trying.
Thank you to the small crowd that's here tonight. For those that aren't here, they're missing out on an amazing experience listening to Danny talk about his story, which is quite phenomenal. For those that have forgotten, I'm Gary Uren, I'm a member of the club, and this is a speaker series. This is the third, in fact, this year that we've had the speaker series, and we're going to continue to do this every month. So, all of you please share the word around. Great. So Danny has got a totally fascinating life story to talk about. I think you're going to be amazed at some of the things that have happened to him. I was lucky enough to catch up with him down here for dinner a couple of weeks ago, a week ago. He shared the story. So it's a story of sailing, absolutely, but it's cycling. And it's got some absolutely amazing twists that come with the story as well, which I'm not going to, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to ruin his story because it's really fascinating. So please enjoy Danny's story. And, you know, I'd advocate, I've actually got a copy of his book here. I didn't pay anything for it, but it's a really good book. He's a published author. It's available in all the usual places that you buy books from. So I'd recommend it as if you like sailing, and if you like life, and if you like adventure, this is absolutely something you should lay your hands on. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Danny.
Yay, Danny! How's everybody doing tonight?
Phenomenal.
Yeah, all right. So yeah, I have a fun story. You know, it's kind of like the German saying Schadenfreude, where you kind of, you know, get pleasure out of hearing misfortune of others. But this is a funny story about kind of what not to do, in a way. So I decided to take off on a sailing and cycling adventure. And so I guess in my youth, I just wasn't as careful as I should have been. So a disclaimer on this is that, you know, this presentation is really just meant to entertain. Everything here is alleged. Really, everyone here is innocent until proven guilty. I just want to tell a really truthful story about what happened, and I don't want to disparage anyone. So if you recognize any of the characters that are in this presentation, please don't blurt it out. I want to keep it, I want to keep it very much just an entertaining talk. So people ask me, you know, why did you write a book? And I think one of the reasons I wrote a book was so I didn't have to talk about it all the time. And it's kind of funny because now I'm doing speeches about my book. But it's really fun because now it's macro, right? So what always happened would be I'd be at a cocktail party and someone would say, hey, didn't you have this experience? And I would start down the road telling them a little bit about it. And then I would never tell them the whole story. And so now it's just so wonderful just to hand them the book. So really the really complete story rather than the anecdotes is key for me. And the historical document that a book creates really is something that I can pass on, I think, to future descendants. You know, they can know me years from now. And I just picture this, you know, maybe like a great grandson will pick up this book and he'll understand what it was like to go sailing in Mexico in 2003. And I just think that putting a book out is something that who knows what happens with it. Maybe it turns into a movie. You never know what's going to happen with it. But my overall goal really was really just to tell a funny story. I just wanted to tell a truthful, funny story about what happened to me because it's a learning experience. Oops. And I can always tell my friends whenever they're asking me a question about it, which they ask a lot of detailed questions, I can tell them just to simply read the book. So I dedicated this book to my son, and also thanks to my wife. This was a trip that I took with a girlfriend years ago, And so I said to my wife that I really wanted to tell a truthful story the way it happened. And she supported me in this, and I love her for that. And the girlfriend that went with me was very helpful as well. And Samantha, to her and her family, I thank you with all my heart. So I hatched a plan in 2003 to sail south with the Baja Ha Ha. How many people here have done the Baja Ha? Anybody?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, well, it's a great event. It leaves from San Diego. There's 2 stops before it reaches Cabo San Lucas. There's about 130 boats on that voyage. So the thought was to go down to the Baja Ha Ha into Mexico, and then spend the winter in the Mexican Riviera, lounging like lizards on the rocks, and then move up to the Sea of Cortez in the spring, and dive and fish. What a wonderful place for sailing. And then spend a summer cycling around Europe. We figured that with the hurricane season, we could get in shape, we could ride around a continent, and we could see a lot. And so we decided to do that, and that actually turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made. And in my book, I talk about it with the fact that sailing and cycling are properly paired. They're the purest forms of propulsion. It really is this thing where, if you think about it, sailing is powered by the wind, and you can go unlimited range. And so is a bike, to that degree. They can go completely opposite places. And so I feel that those two things are complementary. I said when I was sailing that it made me fat because I was lounging so much and relaxing, and cycling made me fit, riding hundreds of miles day after day. So it ended up being kind of an equally spaced journey in terms of mileage. The voyage of Mary Lee, my little sailboat, went down the coast of Baja, and then this would be the Pacific side, and then down into the Mexican Riviera, and then back up into the Sea of Cortez. And then for the bicycle ride, we went through 9 countries, about 3,200 miles in both adventures. So I had this sailing experience as a child. I started racing in the San Francisco Bay. It was a great experience for me, learning how to race. And my first boat, the first boat I got on, I actually went to a bar and hung out at a yacht club until I found my way on a boat. And they wanted me to come and scrape the bottom and paint the bottom for the weekend to get on the boat, so I did that. And then we went out and we kept rounding up, we rounded down, we crashed into everything, we crashed into other boats, and I realized that the captain had 9 DUIs and couldn't drive. And so I switched to a different captain who actually turned out to be the Commodore of the Ensenal Yacht Club, and learned really the love for sailing. And we did a lot of things where we were doing like the South Tower race from Stockton around the South Tower of the Golden Gate Bridge and back. And I remember, like, you can't start your engine and you're on this long race. And I remember the Carquinez Straits where we anchored, and we watched the other boats fighting the wind and going backwards because the current was taking them. And I thought to myself, sailing is one of the only racing sports where you can take the lead by standing still. So anyway, enjoyed that. And then after selling my company, I bought a house in Bello Beach, which is a nearby beach that's not called Bello Beach, but for all practical purposes, we'll call it Bello Beach. And I just wanted to take off before I had commitments. I found that there was a window in my life where I didn't have children, my parents were healthy, the opportunity existed. And I talk about that here. I talk about the fact that, there are windows in life, fleeting windows of opportunity to venture away from the snug harbor you've been sheltered in for way too long, to do something amazing, something transformational. When one appeared in my 30s, I kicked that window wide open. And, the whole premise of being able to do this, I don't know if you ever think about this, or if you ever stop and think about how lucky we are in the time that we are, because being able to go around the world on a boat, or being able to travel country to country and be able to anchor I mean, years ago was a very different situation. So I wrote the prologue to the book, and here it goes. By the dawn of the third millennium, cruisers, history's most decadent breed of explorer, plundered paradise purely for pleasure. With a fishing pole in one hand and a cocktail in the other, they quietly ruled the world. Emboldened by technology that would have astounded early explorers, they paraded around a predominantly peaceful planet. Up until recent times, the seas were uncharted, the natives were hostile, and owning a seaworthy vessel, let alone having the means to venture upon it, was unfathomable for the average man. That all changed. In the wake of globalization, cruisers took the helm. Aboard fiberglass kingdoms of exquisite grace, they crossed great oceans chasing the sun, to the distant anchorages of the brave new world, where the fruits of paradise still hung. For at some point in history, impossible to pinpoint precisely when, the cannibals of yesteryear began accepting credit cards in lieu of eating men. So I just think, we're just lucky that we had this ability. I'm fortunate about it. And so what I did was I decided I was going to rent my house. And in renting my house, very humble little house, little hippie house back in the 60s that I've converted. But one of the things that was always a challenge for me was getting from the first floor to the second floor. And so I installed a fire pole, which I love, 16-foot brass fire pole, which was just wonderful getting down and actually getting up even. It was a great workout. And so I rented this house, I placed an ad on an online site, and I was called by a personal assistant that someone was going to come over and see the house the next day. And they did. They came over. It was a young couple, a brother and sister, dressed collegiately, and they made a fetching first impression. They weren't really interested in negotiating the rent or anything like that, so I figured, hey, this is a done deal, and it was so easy. And in doing so, I also rented my car because I had a couple months left on a lease on a car, and I rented a convertible car to her friend, which turned out to be another mistake. Okay. So, in taking off on an adventure like this, I needed to find the right boat. And to me, I love a full keel boat. I love the fact that a keel like this will not catch nets, which are all over Mexico. The strength and the solidity of a full keel cruiser. And so I chose a North Sea 27. I don't know if anyone knows the North Sea 27 at all, but it's a Lyle Hess designed boat. It is a very, very thick and heavy made boat. But one of the biggest advantages of it is that you can put it on a trailer. So rather than having to sail it home from Mexico, you can put it on a trailer and drive it home. And I was able to do that. I trucked this boat to Maine and sailed it to Florida. I brought it home from Mexico and other things. So it was just a wonderful boat. And the name was Mary Lee. And then I chose the right crew. A good friend of mine, a hockey player from Canada named Slasher, and my great friend Samantha. So we took off on the Baja. Ironically, we have masks on, which I think is really interesting because at this time in 2003, seeing somebody with a mask was a very strange thing. But what had happened was, the night before the Baja, there were wildfires in San Diego, went crazy. And when I got up in the morning, there was an inch of ash on the boat. Wow. And all the way down until we got down past, well past Ensenada, it was a very smoky situation. And as soon as they, started the race, within maybe an hour, the 130 boats that started the race, you couldn't see them anymore. We ran into a megapod of dolphins. As soon as the skies cleared, and this is a shot with 7 dolphins jumping in unanimous jump. But there was probably 1,000 dolphins around us in every direction. A little bit further down the way, Slasher broke the head. I gotta say, being headless on the open sea is not a very fun thing to have happen. But we moved further along, and we came into a situation where I remember off the island of Cedros off of Baja. It's a big island, one of the biggest islands there. And off of Cedros, I found that it was just a beautiful, beautiful situation where I felt the tingling sensation where the boat was lifted by just a perfect wind, and that tingling sensation like you're falling in love. And I just think that that's when a wind-powered craft will just steal your heart. And I think that everyone should experience that. We moved on to Turtle Bay, and then we got clobbered. We started off after Turtle Bay, and we crossed a point called Point Larazos, and the waves started building. And within a few hours, they were 10 feet. A few hours more, they were 15 feet. It started getting very, very serious, and we had our sail rip, and we got into a situation where they kept building and building and building, and we had to make it to Santa Maria to catch up with the fleet. There were pan-pans, there were no maydays, but we were close in some areas because we were knocked down several times by the big waves. And I remember sitting on the beach after that, just wondering, just kind of doing this cost analysis on what it means to go to sea. And at the end, you forget it, you move on, and you learn to love it again, and you forget the bad times. After the beach party in Santa Maria, we moved on to Cabo San Lucas, came home for Christmas, and then came back shortly to take our trip down the Mexican Riviera. So one of the things I did was I went over to a big box store in Cabo San Lucas and I bought a bunch of chicken wings. We decided we're gonna have chicken wings, frozen chicken wings. And so we were playing Yahtzee out at Los Frailes, waiting for the wind to clear and getting ready for our sail to Mazatlan. And as we're eating the chicken wings, Sam started throwing them overboard. And then she argued that, hey, why keep garbage on the boat in the tropics? Why not throw them overboard early? And it made sense at the time, so we started throwing them overboard. It made sense. And so, anyway, after eating all the chicken wings, Sam decided to go down below and make some coffee. Coffee was something that if you made it in a thermos early, we wouldn't have to make it at sea, much easier. And as she was cleaning out the coffee pot after making the coffee pot fell overboard. So she came over to me and she handed my snorkel and my gear and she said, "Go down and get it, sailor boy. We need our coffee pot." And I agreed. So I put on my flippers and I put on my mask and I dove down into a bunch of sharks. And I realized chicken wings, oh no, and I just shot out of there. And anyway, so that was really a scary experience.
So no more coffee.
We didn't have coffee until we bought another percolator in Mazatlan. We cruised on past Isabela, which is an island that's best known as like the Galapagos of Mexico. And we came upon a stowaway. We came up in the morning and we had been anchored off of a jungle estuary in Manchester Bay. And I came out and Samantha said, "Stop what you're doing." I was in the cockpit. She said, "Stop what you're doing." I didn't know what it was, but a 5-foot boa constrictor climbed up on the back of our transom. And so we had this stowaway on our boat that I finally ended up prying off slowly with a boat hook. I had to get him off. It took a while. I was moving out. Finally got to the point where he had no more catch onto our boat, and he fell into the water. He immediately swam over to a power boat, and I have this on video. This snake tried to go up his anchor chain. It tried to go up his transom. It got in his dinghy. He was just running around chasing the snake away. Anyway, if you are anchored off of Mexico and you have a tiller and a keel like I have, you may get a snake up there. We moved on to a place called Chicala, which was a beautiful place that that royalty have had forever, and there's beautiful mansions there. And then you round the corner into Puerto Vallarta, and there's a place called Paradise Village. Paradise Village has a zoo. It's got a grocery store with all the American products, and we were able to anchor our little teeny sailboat for $12 a night right into the marina, right in front of the yacht club. And there we met a very famous YouTube couple. They're very famous now. They weren't at the time, but they had gotten married on the beach, and they had decided that they were going to go over to the South Pacific, and they had crew come in to help them. And the new crew members, which they did not know very well, at least those two didn't know each other, ended up in a big fight. And so it was a lesson to me, because they had to scrap the whole trip because their crew fell apart. It was a lesson to me that a captain really needs to know the crew, especially if they're going 30 days to sea together. It took a while, but we decided we were going to go up north to the Sea of Cortez after that spell. And I said that there was a tractor beam mounted above the pool bar, because we left the coddle life and went back out to sea into the wilderness after having such a great time. We moved on to Isabela, which by the way is, I said, the Galapagos of Mexico. That's what Jacques Cousteau called it. And there's blue-footed boobies, and there's frigates and snakes, and it's just a very, very prehistoric place. And it very much is like the Galapagos in terms of the type of animals there and the nature there. It's a cauldron, and you can walk to the top, and you can look down into a volcano. We moved on up by La Paz into the Ensenada Grande area, and then we found perfection up by Agua Verde in the perfect anchorage. We found an anchorage where it absolutely was protected from the wind and all ours. I like to turn my dinghy into a mobile bar, by the way. We always would drive that around, and we would meet other cruisers, and we'd always have fun there. And as we came back into civilization, I kind of started saying that, coming back to civilization is sometimes as wonderful as leaving it, because we had ice cream and we had all sorts of fresh fruit and things like that. So this was wonderful. We ran into a situation where we were rammed by Humboldt squid. We came to thousands of Humboldt squid, which are the most aggressive creature in the ocean, which was a very scary thing, but nothing compared to what was happening down the road. And that's where the shocking news came in. So after we wrapped up our cruise, we got across to the mainland. We cruised back into Phoenix, and it was kind of weird because we took a bus, and as soon as we got back into Phoenix, I could just feel the tension rise as I got back across into the country after being so tranquil for so long in the Sea of Cortez, just living in wilderness and living above a seafood restaurant where we could go down and grab anything we wanted, lobster for dinner, chocolate clams, scallops, whatever you wanted for dinner. It was amazing. So we get into this hotel in Phoenix, and it was luxurious. I hadn't felt an air conditioner in months. And we had TV, and the programs were in English. And I checked my email for the first time in a while. Back in 2003, we didn't check it every 5 minutes, a little bit different. So I checked my email for the first time, and there was an email from the sheriff's department saying, contact me immediately about the security of your property. And I nervously dialed that phone number, and I got a hold of the police officer. And he informed me that I had rented my house to some people that might have done some things they shouldn't have been doing in it. He told me that my house was a suspected brothel, and that they had had it under surveillance for 5 months. And he told me that the family who had rented it were, I call them in the book, the sultans of sexploitation. So I was shaking. I got that call, I didn't know what to do. I mean, there was a real chance I was going to lose my house. I was off in Mexico having a great time, and it was one of these things where you went from the most tranquil thing in the world to the most tense thing in the world. It's weird, it's hard to explain. But I went back to the house and I met the sheriff, and he told me that it was a ring of people that were turning lots of homes into brothels. In fact, there was several of them locally, and they would sort of direct whoever was calling to the right place. So I decided to take it back. I got a hold of the tenant and told her that I was taking it back. She had already fled. And so I went back to the house, and I went upstairs, and I was going through the house for the very first time. When I opened the door, it was just odd, just what was there. It's in the book in more detail, but the officer felt very much like he was on my side. I felt like he understood what was going on until he looked at me and he looked deep in my eyes. He said, "And what about that fire pole?" But there were guns. It was scary. We found a lot of things that we didn't want to find in our property.
Gotta know your tenants too.
Yeah.
Know your crew.
Exactly. There was he told us that there was a van across the street. They had actually had a cable van across the street for quite a few months, and everybody in my community thought we were getting cable TV. And they were kind of sad to find out that it was actually the police. But we kept being told that there was this man in black that would come in at all times of the night, limos, Ferraris. It was a pretty crazy scene. Martinis on the beach at 7 a.m. kind of thing. Anyway, so we had heard about this guy, the man in black, and he'd been there a lot. And so anyway, while I was in the house, the man in black came through the door, and he aggressively went after me. "What are you doing in my house? Who are you?" This kind of thing. And he was very, very aggressive towards me. And I said, "Didn't you notice the van across the street?" And he fell to his knees and started begging me for his forgiveness. It was amazing how that changed so quickly. And he ended up moving her out, and we took the house back. But he was so apologetic. He was like, "Hey man, have my guitar, have my amp." He kept giving me these musical instruments and things because he thought I would want it because he felt so bad. And I kept telling him I didn't want it, but he kept forcing it on me. He kept telling me he didn't want it, but he left it in the garage and drove off. So Samantha and I, facing what we'd gone through, I said, we've been through storms before. We've been knocked out on the ocean. This is just another storm. Let's go to Europe. And let's have a wonderful time in Europe. And to do that, we were going to take the right bike. We were going to go on a tandem bicycle because a couple can cruise together at high speeds. They can work as a team, and they can experience everything together. So this particular tandem, I've ridden it from Canada to Mexico, Amsterdam to Munich, Montreal to Boston. It's got over 20,000 touring miles. I'm still touring on it to this day. And it has a drum brake in the back with all this weight. It's like 700 pounds. So coming down the Alps, you need an extra brake to stop it. So as we were packing up for the trip, and we were actually heading off to the airport, I had given my house to some school teachers for the summer to watch it. And I said, I told them the whole situation and what was going on, and they said, "No problem, we'll watch your house for you." So as we're going to the airport, I got a call from them, and it was really nice. It was like, "Hey, have a great time in Europe. Hope you guys have a great bike ride." And then she's like, "Hey, wait a minute. There's someone downstairs." And her husband went down to talk to them, and I was on the other end of the phone, and I said, "Stay away. I mean, these people, I saw the gun, stay away." And he went down there, and it was so tense. I was on the line, I couldn't do anything except just be tense about it. And so he comes back, I hear him come back upstairs on the phone, and he gets there, and he goes, "Hey, you know what, so they were trying to break into the garage. Obviously, they get the musical equipment. They were trying to break into the garage. I told them I called the cops. They packed up and they left." Well, they didn't leave because a couple minutes later, there was a knock on the door, and again, I was scared. I heard him going to the door, open the door, and then he came back to the phone. He said, "You've just got a subpoena." I got sued for having my house turned into a brothel. Can't make this stuff up. Okay, so we started cycling Europe, and this is something I'm not going to go into great detail here because I know this is more of a sailing group, but it has equally, I think, fun times. We got stuck at a torture museum. We found ourselves at a fairy tale land of the Mosel Radweg, which is Radweg is a German bike trail, which is like the Autobahn for bikes. Off ramps, on ramps, well lit. It's amazing. We hit the wall at Donau Radweg in Austria. We ran out of food. We ran away from the Iron Curtain after having some seriously scary experiences there. We ran away from an Italian waiter that was trying to overcharge us. After paying for our meal, we ended up having our bike break down on the mountainside and finding a spare part at the last minute. We enjoyed Switzerland, coming back out of Italy into Switzerland. We ran into a forest elf in Germany. You gotta read about her. A 90-year-old little lady that could lift 300 pounds of wood. And then we had an outstanding time in Oktoberfest before we came home. When we came home, we had our court date. And if you want to find out what happened there, you got to read the book. But I will say that it was a learning experience, and I will never do that again. Okay, so the epilogue of the book is actually my favorite chapter. It's a lot of people's favorite chapter because it was with my dad. A lot of this chapter, and you know, my dad was an aviator. He was a fighter pilot, and he was also an orphan at a young age. At the age of 5 years old, he and his three siblings lost their parents for something that would have been cured by penicillin a few years later. But he was so into family because of his loss and not having a family that he was just the most amazing father. And we went on this sailing trip through the Sea of Cortez, and he was sitting there. I remember him at the helm, and it was like he was in his plane again. He was feeling the wind. He was flying again. And I came out. I remember waking up after a long night crossing over the Sea of Cortez, and he was sitting there drinking his gin and tonic, telling me I needed to grab mine. And so years passed, and on his deathbed, it was really strange because on his deathbed, as he was passing away, he kept talking about the boat. He was there in his mind. He was talking. He told me the last thing he said to me before he died was, he reminded me to tie up the dinghy. And so it was a situation where, you know, I had this amazing experience with my father, and we got over to Baja, but then I had to take the boat back, and it was summertime. So Slasher came down to help me. He came down. Sam couldn't, but Slasher came to help me get it back to San Carlos, where I was going to store the boat. And so the weather predictions called for some lightning, but it had passed to the point where we thought it was okay. And we started out sailing, and we were having beers, and it was all great. And then all of a sudden we looked, and there's like 30 fishing boats coming into the harbor in Santa Rosalia. And I'm like, well, that's kind of odd. Maybe it's just coincidental. They're all kind of heading back at the same time. Well, it wasn't coincidental. There was a major front. I've never seen anything like this. It started with a couple strikes on the distance, and then it seemed as though one front was converging with another front. A front from the south was coming in from the front from the deserts of Arizona, and it all collided. And there were strikes, like it seemed like right in front of us, and then we turned, we had to Guaymas, and there'd be a strike right in front of us there. We turn around, there was another strike in front of us, and we only had 20 miles to go to get to San Carlos, but we had this line to go through. And I said, Slasher, what should we do? And he said, we got to turn around. He said, we're going to get killed if we don't turn around. This lightning strikes are everywhere, and there's no way we're going to make it. So we turned around where we had 20 miles left, and we turned back 70 miles back to go to Baja. And the storm was chasing us. It was right on our tail. Strike, strike, strike. As we got further along, we started clearing the area. But as we got towards safety on the other side, all of a sudden the strikes started coming in from that side. And we were stuck in a situation where there were lightning all around us, coming at us from all sides. And we hunkered down and we grabbed something, and we told each other to stay away from anything metal. We got down, and the strike, we saw it on the radar. You could see the thunderheads on the radar, and we saw that thing coming over us. And just as it got over us, just as we were all braced and he and I were hunkered down, the sun popped up. Daybreak. And the daybreak on the upper stratosphere of the clouds just stopped the electricity, and we were saved. Yay! Thank you. So when I was driving across the desert on the way home, after all of this, I was just started thinking about everything that happened, all the things we learned and how far we'd grown and all that stuff. And I just found that, I found forgiveness. I had no longer had any animosity towards what happened. I kind of thought it was kind of funny in a way, you know what I mean? Like, hey, some people get termites, right? And I felt that I could let it go, and I just thought to myself, hey, God needs a clown to write all this stuff down and what a clown I can be, right? So, thank you. So I ended up writing a book about what happened. Coincidentally, the girl who went to my house was arrested 10 years later on a nine-state manhunt, very, very close to here.
Yeah.
For something totally unrelated. So she ended up going to prison.
Yay! Justice.
Justice was served. Yes, yes, yes. Oops. So she went to prison, and so all that was okay. But I ended up writing a book, Xpedition: A Sailing and Cycling Adventure, and it's the only book I believe in this Library of Congress with a brass fire pole on its spine. It's even engraved if you look at it. And I'm very proud of it. It's been an adventure having this book written. When I first released it, it took off in Poland. I don't know what happened there. Got on a blog there and really went crazy in Poland. So I always thought about these Ukrainian soldiers who were serving on the front lines, reading about how much they'd rather be sailing in Mexico. So it's the book is available to on Audible shortly. It's also available on Amazon and every other bookseller you could ever think about. If you do read it, I'd really appreciate a review on Goodreads and Amazon and so forth. The next book that I have coming out is about when I went sailing down the east coast of America from Maine to Florida, rented an RV, came back, bought a house in Sedona, Arizona, only to find out that it was the worst violation of the health code in Arizona's history, with 1,000 rats being hoarded inside of a house. So I guess the theme of this is I'm not very good at real estate.
Real estate management.
Real estate management, yes. So anyway, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and there are, I don't know that we have them here, but actually we've got enough for
I'm gonna
everybody.
win a chicken dinner.
If you have something underneath your chair, you get a free book. There should be a voucher there.
Got one?
Actually, we probably enough for
I'm gonna
everybody.
change chairs.
I actually have. I got the book. I got the lucky seed and I got the book.
Hey, so I want to open it up. Are there questions about what?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's go with that.
Daddy, is there anything you do differently?
Well, probably the biggest thing, the biggest problem really was of everything was renting the car, because when I rented the car to the girl who turned out to be, not very good, it was really hard to talk to the cop at the first part with regards to my house was rented to one person and the car was rented to the other person. That was a very hard thing to get through. That was probably the hardest thing. I think the other thing is that I think that in a situation where you're on a schedule, you're always in trouble sailing. And I love the Baja, but I think if I did it differently, I probably would only go if the weather was right, because we went out in conditions that probably we wouldn't have gone
Doing your
on.
way.
Yeah.
Doing your way.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Can you tell me your time and process of putting your boat on a trailer, where you end up, or how you get to the point of where you decided to do a delivery back, and your experience between those two destinations, departure and destination?
Yeah. So my boat was trailerable, and you know that was probably the best thing, because if you think about it, everybody gets down to Mexico, they've got their boat all outfitted, and then you got to get it back, right? It's so difficult. So the way it worked out is that you're able to transport it from San Carlos to Tucson, where they offloaded it on a crane. It's kind of a situation where you can't have the same hauler haul it out of Mexico and come all the way back. You have to transport it to an American hauler in Tucson. And so it costs some money, but I'll tell you something though. I'll tell you something. If you're talking, especially going east in the U.S., when you're shipping your boat, it's way cheaper, because what happens is the boats are built on the East Coast. They come out here. They're always there's no load going back, and so I think I shipped my boat for $5,000 to Maine. Getting back was much more expensive, because then you're competing with all the other, island packets coming, right? So, but I ended up buying my own trailer after a while, and it was great. It was just so easy to transport that boat around. It's one of the few world cruisers you can take to a lake.
And you still have it?
No, actually, I just recently sold it, and looking for another boat. I know that's kind of appealing to hear at the yacht club. I'll talk to anybody afterward.
Send you an application for.
So yeah, I sold Mary Lee, which was hard, but I needed something different. I want a bigger boat. I want to go back down to Mexico with my family and take them cruising. But in the meantime, I bought a 14-foot Hobie cat. So yeah, so I've got this Hobie Wave, and it screams, and it's my son's name. It's pink slipped in his name, so he's 11 years old and he's learning to sail. And I gotta say, there's a strange comfort in going out on a sailboat when you don't have to worry about the engine, you don't have to worry about all this stuff. It's just all about sailing. So yeah, so it's fun. It's fun. Maybe you'll see me out here soon.
So if you were to repeat your tour again, would you go select like certain places that you would work, like certain places you've never before?
Yeah, I gotta say that of everything I've ever done, the Sea of Cortez was the most magical thing I've ever seen. And if you can ever get down there in the springtime, the anchorages there are so clear, and there's just so many of them, and you can be there by yourself. And I'm not kidding, I had a spear gun, and every day I go down and get something new for dinner. And what was really weird about it was it's wilderness, it's really kind of out there. And I remember in La Paz, I took $300 out of the ATM, and when I got back 3 months later, I had $100 left. There was nowhere to spend money. I bought a ton of beer, and the rest of it I ate seafood. It was just great. And so I would definitely say the Sea of Cortez is the place to be. Yeah, and there's other places I've been that I love, but even down the East Coast, I felt like the cruisers there are watching out for each other. And even though you're in Mexico, if you have your boat there, as soon as you step on board, you're back home. It's your country, in my opinion. Oh, Europe, yeah. So I haven't done too much sailing in Europe. I've done some Caribbean. I've done some in Australia. Yeah, but I think Croatia. I hear Croatia is just amazing. I mean, that's the place. And I know that I've ran into some friends. I got on a boat in Greece, and the winds there can be crazy in Greece. So I think Greece is beautiful, but it's got to be a little scary there. But I think Croatia, if I was going to go anywhere in Europe, it was probably there. Yeah.
I've done both Greece and Croatia.
Have you? Yeah.
And Greece is pretty amazing.
Yeah, is it?
When you get you charter a boat when you get there.
Yeah.
You got the boat, you sell it there, and then you just look at where it's well, and that's well now.
And what do you think of Croatia?
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
It's fabulous. Really, it's great.
Did you charter there?
Yeah. We got the boat.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
That's great.
There's a lot of islands. It's kind of interesting. Some of the places like coves, a lot of them don't have boats. So you'll be in this wonderful spot. Kind of weird. So there is something to it. Yeah, it'll get that.
Yeah. There's so many great places. I mean, there's so many wonderful places to sail. You know, that's a great thing. And you know, if you have a wind powered vessel, you don't have to buy any fuel to get there. So, any other questions, anyone? Okay, well, I'm sure we have books for pretty much everyone. So, thank you very much. Take care. All right.
It was really good.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, there was a little bit. You want to tell them about the